Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are finally on volume 18 of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. It's been 6 months. So I've been doing this series volume to volume, and the sad thing about it is it literally takes like 5 to 6 months to build up enough chapters to do the volumes by volume. But I mean, volume 17 technically just came out in February in Japan, so who knows how long it would have been before we had an English translation. So I'm not sad that I'm doing it this way. It just kind of sucks waiting volume to volume, but I want to do it in the way that the mangakas intend to put it in, because I feel like, especially with Hanako-kun, they do design this series to be volume to volume. So I went back and I read volume 16 and 17 before starting this video. Just madness. I can't believe I forgot that we ended on such a cliffhanger with volume 17. I forgot that we ended with the cliffhanger of Yashiro getting Hanako-kun and being like, let's go, let's get out before Teru kills him. I do, upon a couple notes upon rereading volume 16 and 17. One, something's wrong with Tsukasa. Like, Tsukasa has either been kind of a psychopath from the start, sacrificing the animals to save Hanako, to save Amane from whatever, or he's been constantly possessed by this otherworldly being, or it's a combination of both, and this otherworldly being is like feeding off Tsukasa's dislike of Amane that's been masked as this love, or it's something else entirely. So something's always been up with Tsukasa. And then the real Tsukasa is off in this timeline, so we think. And then the ghost or apparition of Tsukasa we've seen from something's always been wrong, and we don't know enough of the backstory to really discern exactly what's happening, but I feel like it's going to come out in the wash soon. And then with Hanako, he's just wanted to protect Yashiro, so he was willing to sacrifice Ao and get her to go across the border and become an apparition so that he could trade her life for Yashiro's. But I kind of have to, give Teru a little bit of respect. Teru, despite being terrifying and despite threatening Hanako and to kill him, he does bring up a good point to Hanako. He's like, so you just thought you would just trade someone else's life for someone you care about? He's like, what about the people that care about Ao? What about her? What about those people? He's like, how is one life exchangeable for another? And that kind of ties back to Tsukasa exchanging his life for Amane's. Like, that's not good, and that's going against fate. It's like, you can't stop the future from happening. And so Amane getting to live because Tsukasa sacrificed himself, there's been repercussions with that. And then this whole thing with Ao and Yashiro, Teru's like, that's not right. That's not how the world works. And sometimes you just have to let things happen because it's supposed to happen. And you have Kou dealing with the same thing with Mitsuba, going through the same ordeal and questioning whether he needs to become an apparition, and that's a whole can of worms. So I do like the conversation Teru has with Hanako, saying it's not right that you tried to extend Yashiro's life, because he's like, what difference does it make? He says, if you extend Yashiro's life and sacrifice Ao, what happens if Yashiro's hit by a train the next day? What happens if I kill her? He's like, you've sacrificed someone's life and it's not made a difference. So you've just killed 2 people instead of 1 person dying. So I like the conversation Teru has with Hanako. I don't exactly like the way he does it necessarily, but I like that conversation happens. And I just love Yashiro being badass and her and Kou trying to rescue Hanako, because Yashiro had overheard that they were going to try to kill him. So, and of course, I like Akane and Ao. I like them together as a pair. I want them to stay together. So I'm very curious how this is going to go. We'll see. We'll see how this is going to go. But I'm going to be reading chapters 86, 87, 88, 89, and 90, which are the 5 chapters that would be for volume 18. Obviously, it's not come out yet, but they're the chapters that would comprise it. And then we'll get to wait till Christmas to read volume 19. So if the series is still going, right? So it's been a long time coming. I have patiently waited, and I wanted to make sure that the English translations for all the chapters were out, but I believe they are. So we're going to dive right in. I'm excited. So let's not waste any more time, shall we? We are going to start volume 18 of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, the OG for this channel. I'm excited, and we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. That was so satisfying. That was so satisfying. God, it was worth waiting the 6 months for those chapters. It was. I couldn't believe that the very next chapter, I remember when volume 17 came out, everybody was like, you sure you don't want to read the next chapter? And I was like, no. And the next one, of course, is the one where everything goes down. Because of course it is. Oh my gosh. I freaking love it. I'm surprised. Of course, we only get the one chapter with Yashiro and Hanako-kun, and it finally happens. We finally get them together. After all this time, after 86 chapters, we finally get them kissing. And I'm like, yes, finally. But God, that chapter 86 was great. And then Kou, meanwhile, having his own struggles. Oh my gosh. Oh, there's some good stuff to talk about this. I took a couple notes right after stopping the initial reaction there. So yeah. So I love Yashiro taking charge because they're coming at this from two different perspectives. You have Yashiro who is like, look, Hanako, I love you. I should have said, like, she's had all this time with the Red House and everything to stew over. And she hints at the Red House, and Hanako goes like, what house? But we don't have time to talk about that. But I love that she's like, I've had all this time to stew and realize that, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. She's like, if I see you again, I'm going to tell you how I feel. And she's like, I'm going to confess to you that I love you. And meanwhile, Hanako and Aoi have had this conversation where he's kind of been like, yeah, I do love her. And he's trying to rationalize with him how to say it to her. And then I love that Yashiro just comes out and says it. She's like, I love you, damn it. Quit complaining and trying to make this, hard. She's like, no, I love you. And he's like, but I was thinking about it right when the chapter started, that it's interesting that Hanako's power as an apparition is to grant wishes. And that's kind of tied to the creepy apparition that is with Tsukasa and wanted to grant Tsukasa's wishes. So there's an interesting connection there, and I'm sure that it's going to tie to it. Whereas Tsukasa, or the Tsukasa that we know in the real world now, grants wishes to apparitions, to ghosts, and Hanako grants wishes to those of the living. So there's a connection there. There's something there, but I'm waiting for the story to fully flesh it out, right? I know if you go back to the legend of Hanako-kun and stuff like that, it's probably in there, but I'm waiting for the story to flesh it out. But Hanako's like, I just wanted to grant the wish of letting you live as long as possible. And she's like, I'm not guaranteed that. He's like, I just wanted to see you live a healthy life, a long life. And he's like, and if you stayed with me, that wasn't going to happen. You weren't going to live a long life as long as you were with me. He's like, so I wanted you to grow up and grow old and get married and have kids and stuff. And he's like, you shouldn't care about me. And she's like, well, screw that. She's like, I don't even know if that's going to happen. She's like, you've seen that that's not guaranteed to me. So I want to live the life that I can now. And she's like, I know that we can't be together technically, but that doesn't stop me from loving you. So it's an interesting parallel that you have the Oni, the number 6, lamenting his love of Sumire and how it develops over time. And he has the regrets of not telling Sumire how he felt before she died. And you have that paralleling with Hanako and Yashiro of Nene, and Hanako having regrets and Yashiro having regrets, except Yashiro, unlike Sumire, we don't really know if Sumire had actual love for number 6. We know number 6 kind of developed a love for her before she died. But Yashiro's like, I'm not going to have no regrets. I'm going to tell you how I feel, Hanako. And I love that she's like, I hate you. You complain all the time, and you try to shoulder it all yourself. She's like, you have to depend on other people. Like, don't try to, and there's another parallel too of her saying, don't try to play the hero in all this. Kind of like what Teru tells Kou. We'll talk about them. But she's like, no, you're not alone. So quit acting like it. She's like, don't try to take matters into your own hands when it involves other people's lives. And she's like, I love you, damn it. So I just love that whole thing of them on the staircase in silence. There's so much of this volume that was in silence that it was so good. And just them, and finally just her giving Hanako his space. Like, she's like, I'm just going to simmer down. And then that gives Hanako time to realize, yeah, I do care about her. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I just thought that if I did it this way, you could live this long life and it would be okay. And she's like, well, you didn't consider how I felt in all of this. So, I don't want to be away from you. She's like, I really care about you. And even if I only have this short amount of time with you, I want to spend it with you. I don't want to be apart from you, right? She's like, what is that? And he's like, well, I figured if I could be apart from you, you'd eventually forget about me and move on. She's like, that my life would be so much worse if you had never been in it. So I love that. And then it was so tender and so sweet, them finally coming together and him like holding her hand and stuff. And it was the most like, because he died at 13 and obviously he's been around a lot, 50 years longer than that, but he's like still in this 13-year-old mindset. But it was just like the most wholesome, sweet little kiss of him like holding her hand and hugging her and then giving her a little kiss. And that's all Yashiro's wanted. And she's like, I'm so glad I got to see you again. It's like, it's so good. It's so good. It's like the wait has been worth it to get them to finally communicate, to talk it out. And it's like you don't know what's going to happen because, yeah, he is a ghost. She probably isn't going to be able to be with him forever. But just her getting to act on what she's wanted to half of this series, to finally confess and finally for them to get their feelings for each other out in the open, regardless of how things end up. It's like they've had that moment and it's like that's all I've wanted for like so long in this series. It's like, yes. But I really wish they'd do a season 2 of this. I really do. They could do a season 2, season 3 at this point. They could be in season 3 at this point with the manga. It's just so good. The artwork and animation is gorgeous as always, but just the scariness and the gore of it, like just, it's really, really well done. So I like that we get, a little peek into Hanako's feelings of helplessness, Yashiro admitting that she loves him, and then we cut back to Kou and Teru. I really love Kou. Kou is like one of my favorites in this. I love him. He's great. He's such a good character, and he's like just such a good friend. He's like, he doesn't help Yashiro senpai. He doesn't help Nene senpai because he loves her necessarily. It's his feelings for her, I don't think, are like Hanako's, but he helps her because she's his friend and he cares about her. And Teru's got some issues. I don't hate Teru. I really don't. I think Teru, I understand why he feels the way that he does. And Teru's problem is he's had all of this burden shouldered on him since he was a kid, and he's tried to protect his brother, who he feels is weaker than him, and in the process, it's made him a lot colder. Like Teru's had to grow up a lot faster and mature in this role of being the main exorcist for the family, and he's tried to shelter Kou and keep him away because he knows like what damage it can do. Like Teru's seen the damage that this role has done on him, and he doesn't want Kou to suffer the same fate. But Kou's like, he's like, you've sheltered me all this time, but it's not helped me grow in any way. He's like, so you've just made it worse, right? But there's so much at play between Kou and Teru in these chapters. There's so much at play. There's Teru envying Kou's weakness, being like, I wish I could be like you and not have to like do this stuff for the family and be the main exorcist. I wish I could have a chance at a normal life like you could. He's like, but I can't. And then Kou being like, I'm not weak. He's like, and then there's a whole thing about the chores. He's like, you've just made me a replacement for our mother. And it's like, oh, we're gonna dive down that rabbit hole, because he's, we've had Teru and Kou's mom in like previous chapters back in the Red House with Tsukasa. And Kou's like, I didn't mind doing the chores, but I was miserable because he's like, you denied me a chance to be with you as your brother and to grow alongside you because you were too worried about me, and you just stifled me into this role as just doing the chores and taking care of things, and it kept me from, developing as a person. He's like, and that's not right. And so then it's so good. He's like, and Teru's like, well, just being the hero isn't all it's cracked up to be. You just want to be the hero and be the one to save the day. And he's like, it's not easy and it's not like that. And by the end of it, Kou's like, I don't want to be the hero. I just want to save my friends and keep them safe and just do what I can as a person to help with that. And it's like, oh my gosh, so good. I love it. And so then we get, of all things, we get number 6 showing back up, who it's been several volumes since we've seen him, and Sumire, and just getting his whole backstory. So getting all the things about the Minamoto clan, like claiming him as their personal bodyguard, their personal assistant, and him following the Minamoto clan all this years, tying back to the Minamotos and the Aois and the Akanes being connected with the Kanagi and all that. What I like about it is that the original Minamoto, the original exorcist that came and killed all the Oni, he saw number 6 and was like, oh, you're different than the other ones. You're not violent or destructive. And he's like, I just don't care. Like, he's like, I'm not really good at that sort of thing, so I just kind of do these odd jobs. And he's like, well, fine, you can come help the Minamotos and be our guard, and we'll just take you in. And the thing is, the original Minamoto exorcist that took him in didn't have him do bad things. He just had him like come around the village and help out with tasks and things. And it was all very basic and nonchalant and very laid back. He's like, well, then just come help us. If you have nowhere else to go and you're not destructive, just come help us and do these odd jobs for us. And I love that panel where it shows, he kind of looks like Teru and Kou, where it shows him growing older and it shows him like fist bumping the Oni number 6 when he's old, and it's like, that's so sweet. But once he dies, the number 6 doesn't know where to go, so he just follows, as an Oni, he just follows the Minamoto clan throughout the years, and you slowly see like the corruption. You see the Minamoto clan slowly using him more and more, and it starts out as different little odd jobs, and then by the end of it, I love the build up and how it escalates, and I love that build up to the point where they're like, kill the house. And it's like, oh, it went from being these little odd jobs the Oni was doing to murdering an entire household for the Minamoto clan. So the Minamoto clan is not all sunshine and roses. They're quite corrupt. And the number 6, when he was an Oni, he's like, I just did what they told me to because I didn't know what else to do. And so then they put him in charge of the Kanagi, the Akane girl, Sumire, when she was 6 years old. And she doesn't have a clue. She's just been told she's going to be a bride. And she just uses the concepts that she has as a bride. And she's like, well, we'll do husband and wife things. And he's like, I'm a demon. I don't know what that means. So instead, she follows him around. They do different things. And she starts taking care of all the animals as she gets older. And I like the time skip of showing them, her as a little kid, being happy with number 6. And then cutting to her being a woman, being an adult. And her taking care of the animals. And at first, I didn't understand the thing with the animals. When she's like, I'm taking care of all of these creatures and making them better and healing them, but I want them to be sad when I'm gone, and I want them to cry and suffer, and I want them all to go to hell. And at first, you're like, why is she so dark with all the animals? But then you realize the animals are a metaphor, an analogy to the village itself, because the village is sacrificing her to make their village healthy again and to give them all peace. They think that sacrificing this human life is going to bring them happiness and peace. Like the sacrifice and murder of her will somehow heal everything. And she hates it because she knows it's bullshit. And so I love her saying, like, I'm sitting here, my job is to heal the village just like I'm going to heal these animals. But what I really want is for them to suffer because this isn't fair. Why did I have to be, from a young kid to now, groomed and watched over by this demon that I can't do anything with? For nothing. I'm living this life for no reason, and it doesn't have purpose, and she just feels nihilistic, like there's no point in me existing. And meanwhile, this demon is like, and it's the weirdest thing, he's like, I don't know if it's love, but he clearly comes to care about her, and he wants to tell her, but he doesn't know how to say it, so he doesn't, right? And he never gets the chance to tell her how he feels. And that whole scene where she's like, I want to do what a husband and wife does with the demon, and he's like, but he doesn't know, or if he does, he's like, how does that even work? And he doesn't act on it, and instead just leaves her be. He regrets that too. He's like, I should have said something, but I didn't, right? And then she gets sacrificed. And then I love that that's when they're back at the village, and the village is like, well, now we can be at peace now that she's dead. And he's just like, that was such a waste of a life. Like, why did it matter? Why did her dying make you all have such a great life now all of a sudden? And I love that he goes back to her final words, and she's like, I want them all to suffer. And then it clicks that it's not about the animals she was rescuing. She was talking about the village. And so he slaughters all the adults in the village. And it's like, that was what she meant. And then he lets the kids go because he has an affinity for not hurting kids, just like how he couldn't hurt Samir when she was a little kid. So, and then we cut back to the present where he views Kou as a kid, so he doesn't want to hurt Kou, and Kou taking up his brother's sword because Hanako sealed the staff, so he can't use it. So he has Teru's sword, but he talks about how Teru's sword is actually really heavy, and he's like, man, my brother can wield this with one arm, and I have to like grip both hands because he's not as strong as Teru, and he hasn't had the training with it. But he says that I'm not a hero, but I have things I want to do. I want to see Mitsuba again. I want to save Yashiro and Hanako. I want to save Akane and Aoi. He's like, I want to save my brother. He's like, I've got people I want to save and things I want to do. So you are just going to have to deal with this. And then, of course, we end the chapter with him attacking number 6. And supposedly, I wouldn't be surprised if number 6 dies after this. If number 6 evaporates, I would not be surprised. But it's going to be very curious. I'm assuming that we're going to go back to Yashiro and Hanako-kun and resolve that whole deal. Hanako-kun will probably be like, well, I love you, but I can't be with you, bye, and still try to be a nag. I'm sure he'll try to. I'm sure Yashiro's like, stop it. I'm wondering if Yashiro is going to bring up Tsukasa in the next volume to try to get Hanako to come back with her and be like, hey, so here's the thing about your brother. We might need to go back to the real world and take care of this, because what the hell's over there if Tsukasa has been stuck in the red house this whole time? I don't know. I'm like, I'm very curious. But these chapters, oh, they were so good. They were like, mwah, I've waited 86 chapters for her and him to kiss. They finally do. They confess. It's like, yes, finally. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, that was worth it. That was worth the wait from Christmas. What a Christmas in July, right? That's exactly what this is. Oh my God. What a wonderful chapter. What a wonderful set of chapters. So yeah, the sad thing is that I'm gonna have to wait until probably December, because if this chapter has already come out now, we'll have 91, 92, 93, 94, and 95. So when chapter 95 gets an English translation, I will definitely read those 5 chapters. So it'll be chapters 91 through 95. But God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I can't wait. But I'm very, very curious to know all y'all's thoughts down below of what you thought of these chapters. I'm so happy for Kou standing up for his beliefs, like helping his big bro out, like fighting the number 6 apparition by himself. And that makes me feel better about Kou, because Kou has worried me a lot in this series, because he's been talking about wanting to become an apparition himself, maybe, to get to Mitsuba. And here, it seems like Kou has the will to live. Kou wants to live because he has people that he needs to save, and he has objectives he needs to do. So I'm like, good. I'm glad Kou has that. So now I'm curious how Yashiro and Hanako are going to move forward in all this. I'm curious to know what Teru and Kou are going to do, what Kou is going to do to save Teru and Akane and Aoi and the others, if the number 6 apparition is going to get exorcised by the sword. There's so many things I have questions about, but I'm very curious to see, once chapter 95 comes out with an English translation, I'll be giving volume 19 a look. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be anxiously waiting for the next 5 chapters of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. Bye.